identify those opportunities within procurement. So before I even start, I'm Laila Kakar and I'm the lead data scientist within MTN. MTN is one of the biggest African telco operators. So whenever we're talking about AI and why it's critical, why do we actually think that it's critical? And why should a lot of companies even look into AI? The thing where it goes wrong with most of the companies is while they're focusing on AI, they forget what the true purpose of AI is. AI is not the end objective itself. It's a means to achieve the business objective rather than the end objective itself. So whenever you're looking into AI, it's not that you have to focus which solution you want to use or how you should use a solution, because AI is a really broad term. It starts from, let's say, facial recognition to intelligence robotics into deep learning. So whenever you use AI, the term itself is a really broad aspect. So it's easier to focus on whatever business objective you want to achieve and then figure out which AI solution is the best fit to it. So how should you even start finding those use cases and the best fit for AI? So first things first, it's really difficult to start introducing a really advanced solution when your digital ecosystem is not even efficient or well managed. So there you should start with. You should also make sure that the ecosystem itself is strategic and agile, and that at least AI can achieve its full potential. A good example of this is, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to start introducing predictive analytics if at the very first beginning you haven't even automated all of the processes that are able to be automated, or whenever you're dealing with data that's not even smart data. So with first things first, it means whatever inputs you would need for AI and whatever processes you are involving within AI, they need to be set in place and they need to be agile and strategic. The next point that you should really keep in mind is, don't get blinded by the bright lights. So AI is definitely not the silver bullet, though it can be forceful if the user aim is good. So what do we mean with that? A good example is that AI can signal all of the needles within the big amount of haystacks of data that you're using to train your AI models on. And it's eventually up to the business expert to figure out which one of these inputs are valuable to achieve the business objective that you want. So it's not like that the AI solution does all the thinking for you. It gives you the insights and it maybe gives you the route on how you can achieve the objective that you want. Later on in my presentation, I will discuss a specific solution that we have introduced with MTN that helped us to achieve this business objective that we had. Okay, so you should also start small and grow big. What do I mean with that? Adopting AI should always be a part of a wider and bigger strategy. So don't start with the most difficult, the biggest solution that you can have out there. Start small, figure out whatever is working and what's not working, and build on top of that until you reach whatever you want to reach. The biggest thing with AI is, why do we even call it AI? It's artificial intelligence, meaning that it learns from itself. So that is a really important aspect, meaning that you have to start really small, make the machine learn from itself, and then build on top of that. And one of a really important aspect is, of course, the adoption. Adoption is key. If your users not using your solution, or if they don't truly understand how they can use your solution, then you're actually building solutions for nobody. One of the more difficult parts of AI is it's pretty complex. If you look what's underneath the engine, so the brains of your solution, is it necessarily for your users to actually understand all the mathematics and statistics that's going on? No, definitely not. But what do they need to understand is whenever their inputs is needed. And this I will also explain later on with one of our use cases, how we did that. So building an analytics culture is really key. They have to understand how we are using the solution and what those insights could mean for them. So translate those insights into actions. Okay, so our digitization roadmap, I briefly touched upon this before in the previous slide. So it's really important that you start with a data-driven mindset. If your users do not know how they can use analytics, or if they have no clue of what analytics in general is, then that's a big loss that you start with, and it's really difficult for them to adopt the new solutions that you're introducing. So as what we did with MTN was we sent out weekly digital news flashes. And those news flashes would explain in really easy wording what the biggest buzzwords were out there, like AI, machine learning, deep learning, just name it, everything that's out there now, but then in simple words, and also explain the use cases within telco, but also in other industries, so that the readers or procurement experts would get a really good idea of what's going on and what the possibilities are with digitization and with AI. We also introduced the GSCC Academy, and within our academy, we wanted to make sure that we future-proof their skills. So it's not necessary for all of our procurement experts to be mathematicians and to be able to code in Python or in R, but it's definitely important for them to understand what they can achieve and maybe use the basics when it comes to RPA, for example. Then our next step within our journey was to move from manual to robotic. So everything that they would spend time on that wasn't adding value, for example, harmonizing the data, restructuring data, or even communicating with their stakeholders to get the data, or communicating the insights by translating it into PowerPoint reports manually. We wanted to automate this all. And we introduced Jessica. Jessica is actually our female robot. She isn't a physical robot, but she's the face of all of our digitization solutions that we have introduced. Why is it so important that we have a face? Because then it really starts to live with all of our experts. We get their attention. They say, okay, this has to do with Jessica, and it's easier for them to understand instead of it just having difficult names and not marketing it. So maybe external marketing is important, but internal marketing is as important. The next step that we wanted to achieve is then operational efficiency. So what does that mean? In the beginning, for example, for our P2P data, our procurement experts needed to reach out to all of our different opcos, which are 20 different opcos, different languages, different ERP structures. And whenever they got the data, it was unstructured. They needed to spend a lot of time harmonizing it. And we introduced our new BPA platform, which was called Boom. And it was built in-house based on low coding. The next step that we introduced was the real-time insights. So like I said, we didn't want them to spend a lot of time on PowerPoints, going back and forth with the users, trying to get the data from them and then harmonizing it, putting it into PowerPoints. We wanted them as soon as that they get the smart data, so data that is ready to be analyzed, ready to be translated into insights, to be seen on the dashboard so that our stakeholders could log into the dashboards and real time see what's going on. The next step that we went was a lot more advanced when we introduced DSA. DSA is also our in-house application that we built based on open source technology. It stands for Decision Support Application, and it's an application that we introduced to move away from gut feeling decisions to fact-based decision making. And eventually where we want to go, what our finish line is the procurement cockpit. So a fact-based decision making on real-time data from all of our available data, backed up with machine learning and AI. So let's go into a deep dive in one of our solutions. I briefly mentioned this, Jessica. Jessica is, like I said, not our physical bot, but she's the face of all of our initiatives that have to do with RPA and BPA. So we introduced the weekly digital news flash, so we would increase and improve the digital knowledge of all of our procurement experts. We also introduced a lot of RPA initiatives, starting with simple things like they needed to fill in a really complex Excel template, and it was really time consuming. So at this moment, they just email Jessica. Jessica automatically translates a really simple Excel that they fill in into a more complex one, and then they're able to upload it. We also had our chatbot, so whenever they had simple questions about our platforms, they could just instantly get their answers. And we also introduced their academy in order to make sure that they future-proof their skills. So we don't want them to spend time on things that are not value adding, but really work on the strategic work and actually use their expertise in. So what were those focus points of Jessica? I already mentioned that one of our important things was to build an analytics culture. Before we even did anything with machine learning or AI, we wanted to make sure that their mindset was changed and that they thought in a digital way. We also wanted to boost their digital skills, improve their employee morale. So why is it improved? If you stop spending time on tasks or work that's not value adding, this would improve your employee morale. We also wanted to make sure that our business processes were more efficient and that we were more innovative and that we had a lean and agile procurement approach. And of course, risk management is also a really important fact. Like when we introduced our platform to get the data, we made sure that controls were built in, we made sure that there was a workflow, and we had the audit trails. So let's now go to our second use case that we introduced, and this is the more advanced solution that we have introduced within GSSC. DSA, like I said, stands for Decision Support Application, and it consists of 3 modules. And all of these modules, the main focus is we want to move away from gut feeling, we want to have an audit trace, we want to use statistics, and we want to make fact-based decisions. So how does these modules help us? The first thing that we introduced was the price curve modeling. So you can imagine within procurement, we have a lot of negotiations and a lot of prices that we are getting. It's at this moment, it was at that moment really difficult for them to get a really good understanding of what the past trends were, of what we have been seeing in the past, what do we expect in the future. So within our price curve modeling module, they were able to see that, okay, I see these prices for our vendors in the past. Are these outliers or aren't these outliers? And why do I see a certain trend? Does it make sense or not? What are those indicators that are pushing these certain trends that I've been seeing? And can I use this information of the past to predict how my prices would change in the future? And how does these indicators of the past influence the price in the future? All of these insights and actually knowledge are incorporated into our price curve modeling. A second step would then be our scenario analysis. You can imagine that whenever our procurement experts have to deal with multi-billion-dollar transactions, that it's really difficult for them to keep in mind the hundreds of millions of opportunities and possibilities that they have. At the moment, that was not possible, but within the scenario analysis module, they will make sure that they use their business expertise. For example, they will know which objective they want to optimize. They would also know what the restrictions are at the moment. And based on those inputs, they put in the application, and the application will optimize that objective and give them the optimal solutions. You can also think it the other way around. For example, let's say that I want to make sure as a procurement expert that I want to reach a certain, let's say I want to reach a certain price, or I want to reach a certain transaction. How do I get to that point? And how can I influence my vendors to give me exactly what I want? And this is a part of game theory. So within your scenario analysis, you say, this is my objective, this is what I want to reach, and then it will reverse engineer based on the price curve modeling too, whatever steps you need to do to get to that point. So they would know that, okay, the behavior of these vendors in the past have been like this. If you want them to come up with this pricing, then this is how you would influence them. So again, it's a combination between the price curves modeling, behavioral analytics, and scenario analysis itself. The last module that we introduced was the market share simulation. You can imagine also during your strategic decision making that there are a lot of possibilities that you have, but you want to know, okay, what kind of an impact does this have on my business? How would it influence my market share? How would it actually influence my price curves? And how can I reach that point? So this is when the market share simulation model comes into play. So like I said, we had a lot of different indicators that would help us out and a lot of different benefits that we get from the decision application. One of these were that everything is backed up with machine learning and advanced analytics. Everything is based on open source technology and is in-house developed. One of these benefits are, for example, optimization decision-making, insights for strategy, analyzing behavior negotiations. But the most important aspect is that we wanted to make sure that whatever we were taking decisions, we had an audit trace. It was backed up by statistics and machine learning, and it was optimized in a way that would make sense and we could go back to and see that, okay, this was our objective, this is what we wanted to optimize, and this is how we reached that point. So these were the main two cases whenever it came to AI and machine learning within GSCC. Of course, we have many more, but these are the more recent ones. And I think they're really different, as in one is more focused on AI and the other more on RPA, but they both have different benefits that they gave us. And I think this is a good closing of my webinar. Like I started in the beginning, AI is not the end objective itself. As you can see, we have two different solutions that we have introduced, and they gave us really different benefits. The most important thing is start with whatever business objective you want to achieve, and then figure out what your best solution is.
So we are done?
Yes, we are done.
Thanks a lot. I love the presentation as well. Beautiful. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are not in the conference hall to give applause, but thank you so much. Well done. Now questions, guys. Raise hand, please. There is a button where you can click raise hand and we can give you a microphone to speak, or you can type your questions. Good students, they got everything, so no question from nowhere.
Martin, I've got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Laila, thank you for the presentation. It was really good. You touched upon some of the open source ideas and, you know, building your stack on top of that. What exactly did you use and how did you go about, you know, introducing that over, you know, something more prominent like Microsoft's Azure solutions as an example?
Okay, so maybe I can give the example of DSA, which I discussed. So a decision support analytics application that's built on R software. So why did we go for R? Because a lot of the aspects that we use within the application is built on or is based on predictive analytics. And R is really strong with that. Optimization is also really easily done with R. And my own background is also within statistics and machine learning, so I was familiar with the solution. However, people that are familiar with R know that the interface is not that user-friendly. I think if we would show that to our procurement experts, they would have a little faint because it's a lot of coding and you cannot give them as a solution. So what we did was we wanted the user interface to be really friendly and that it was just clicking and scrolling for them. For example, whenever they put in their restrictions, it should just be easy bars that they could play with around and then see whatever decision they want to make, what kind of impact it would have. So then we used Shiny to create a user-friendly interface. So it would just look like any other application that you would maybe buy from the market. But in our case, because it was built in-house by my own team, it was really user-friendly and we could customize it to their specific needs. I hope this answers your question.
Thanks a lot, Laila. I hope Kaysar got the reply for the question. Now we have one more question. I love this part when I see participants are asking questions. Manoj Mishra from Union Insurance. Can you start with the question, please?
Sure. So I wanted to ask you, Laila, what is actually when you apply the RPA implementations? So how would you ensure that, the maker and checker kind of a validation, like you are doing something that takes automation on the orchestration that you have, and there is a process already that was being done manually by some intelligent people, real intelligent humans. So how you ensure that there is a validation on top of it, because whatever the AI does, it always give you a level of confidence with this, that it follows or processes any request. So how you ensure that there is a maker checker kind of a validation on such implementations?
Thank you, Manoj. That's actually a really good question. 2 points. For our RPA, it had nothing to do with statistics and predictive analytics or AI in particular. So we didn't have to deal with a confidence interval. It was literal manual tasks that our procurement experts were doing, and we just automated that with a robot. So testing that was really pretty straightforward, because let's say you had 10 different scenarios, we needed to run it on 10 different scenarios and see, do we get exactly the same output? So this was the easy part of it. However, whenever it came to predictive analytics, like I said, and for example, the scenario analysis, that's a bit more tricky, because you have to do with a confidence interval, like you said, which is important in that case, because I also mentioned that in the beginning, AI is not the silver bullet. It doesn't give you one answer and that's the truth. That's why it's important that your experts understand how they can use the insights. So we did a lot of training of showing them that it's never one answer. It's a bound, it's an interval that you get, like a worst case and a best case. And based on that, you need to take decisions and you need to determine what the best steps are to achieve your business objective. So I think, Manoj, to answer your question, for the first one, whenever predictive analytics or statistics is not involved, it's more easily because it's just straightforward steps. But whenever it indeed comes to AI and whenever it comes to a confidence interval that you need to keep in mind, the more important thing is that your users have a good understanding that that's the case, and they do not believe that it's just one answer and that's the answer and the truth. So building an analytical culture within your team is really important.